Well, good morning, Internet students. Hope everybody had a good night's sleep from our last lesson. This lesson is going to be a lot of biceps, quadriceps, triceps, and just plainly your muscles are going to be worked in this lesson. So I hope you're getting a lot out of these lessons. I actually am doing these as a college class lesson instead of like a video lesson where you have people that say, okay, attach clip here, and then they go to the next cut and they say, okay, now go ahead and put the tar paper here, and then they go to the next cut. And, you know, with these scripts that I'm reading from, I've done a lot of background research on them. So this is why that my videos are 10 to 15 minutes long, but you get the entire gist of the project thread that you need to complete your milestone. All right, so tools and equipment: hammer, nails, square, circular saw, jigsaw, chalk line, chalk, tool belt with ample supplies, cordless screw gun, wood screws, stain, paint brushes, paint stir sticks, and proper attire. You're also going to need a ladder and some sturdy footwear, and make sure it is a dry day. Step 1: planning the milestone of installing your cathedral ceiling in your log home. The first thing that you want to do is set up a workspace. You could set up your sawhorses in a designated area, inside or outside the log home. It doesn't matter. Just make sure it's a designated area where you can hoist up the tongue and groove ceiling panels as they are cut. Um, you know, my two sawhorses were set up about 12 foot apart because I had 16 feet long, 8-inch wide, and 1-inch thick tongue and groove pine ceiling panels, which I could lay across the sawhorses. And most cuts were not beneath the 12-foot mark. Uh, the reason why I had such long ceiling panels is because the longer span, you could see, um, it strengthens the roof ceiling, you know, purposely, and then also it doesn't have so many pieces that you have to uh, go ahead and piece together, and your job becomes much quicker. So, tip: it is best to stain both sides of your ceiling panels prior to install. I know the plan recommends only stain the side facing down into the log home, but you know, anything, you want more protection than is required. And since this outer side of the ceiling panel is going to be facing the sun until all 6 sides of your roof are complete, it's best to go ahead and make sure that you have the proper protection from ultraviolet rays. Step 2: staining. Once you have a good sample of the tongue and groove pieces stained, stand them up through the roof rafters, as you can see I have here, which are the beams that you've just constructed in the previous video, and balance them on the end where it touches the subfloor. Then you will climb up onto the scaffold and walk on top of your roof trusses while selecting the tongue and groove pieces peering through the roof beams. It will make your life a lot easier. Tip: the sun is your enemy with a freshly built log home, which we're going to find out in the next video when we start staining the logs. So the darker the stain is better protection. However, since you're using ceiling uh, panels, I used a clear stain called Symphony, and that actually worked out just fine. And you want to stain both sides, as I just mentioned prior. Step 3: tie in the gables. Now, before you get started, install the tongue and groove pieces. It's best to cover the outside gables, uh, uh, with tar paper first. You will do this by hoisting up first an OSB plywood uh, that is cut so that you could both walk up a ladder with it and also carry it. And I cut mine in about 4 feet wide sheets because I couldn't walk up the entire 8 foot long piece of OSB up a ladder and then nail it in. but I could actually hold a 4 foot piece. And again, I'm athletic and athletic build and can lift heavy things while balancing on a ladder. If you are not that kind of a person, you would have to parse out this to a contractor to do this for you. Cut the appropriate lengths and angles, of the pitch of your roof, which my pitch was a 12/6 pitch, which is 22.5 degrees pitch. And then nail them up as prescribed, as listed in your plans. Once the exterior walls are installed for your loft gables and wing gables, you will perform the same for the other side of your loft walls and then also on the other side of your wing. And then your entire home will have your gables covered at this point. Lastly, don't forget to install the tar paper on the outside of the OSB sheets of plywood you've just installed. Once this is complete, then the installation portion of the knotty pine wooded ceiling is next. So hopefully you understand that it's best to get the gables covered at this point to help protect from the weather elements, and also it also protects your inside wood when you set up a workspace inside. If rain comes in and things like that, you can stop it. And remember that you just built your gables previously. Now you want to cover them with OSB and tar paper to kind of seal off the house at this point. Tip: you can actually install OSB on your gables from inside your loft area, again by cutting 4 foot sheets and then leaning outside. And then remember that your studs are 16 inches on center, and then you would take your nail gun or your hammer and nail and actually nail them in. That was one of the easiest solutions to the dilemma of holding up an 8 foot sheet. I actually cut them in half, but I had the proper angle of the pitch of the roof, and then it was much easier just to lean outside and nail it up instead of going out on a ladder and doing it. Step 4, install tongue and groove. It doesn't matter what roof that you begin on. Remember, I have 6 different roofs. I've got 2 over each wing, which makes 4 roofs, and then 2 over the great room, which makes 2 roofs. But what does matter is that you begin at the bottom portion of the roof. I started at one wing of the house, which was lower than the loft's higher roof, which is basically the wing. And oddly enough, I could stand on the rolling scaffold the whole time, so I didn't really need to be on a ladder inside. And you could wheel that scaffold around when you stand on it. And since your ceiling trusses are about 32 inches on center, and remember, you've already carved those massive beams out, and it looks like a 15th century, 16th century Catholic church inside. So you really, have got a lot of nice woodworking going on. And again, I had this 16-foot pieces, so I had to cut them down to 12 feet. Plus, you need an overhang by about 3 feet. So I had about a 15-foot span, which I had to go up the entire width of the wing, which was easy to go one piece at a time. You didn't have to piece it, anymore. So essentially one piece was one course, and then you just go up, and I put 2 nails in on every course and every ceiling truss, and that way it would be very secure. Tip: since there'll be 2-foot overhang to create an eave, you must ensure that you cut extra and leave that span overhanging. I actually had a 3-foot overhang. And you can snap a chalk line later and cut it down to the exact eave length of an overhang that you want. So you don't have to be too concerned about these lining up on the eave side of the home, because after you're done with all the courses for that ceiling, you're going to actually go up and snap a chalk line and cut that down very nicely and accurately to make it flush. It is imperative that you make straight and level as possible the very first piece of tongue and groove. This will set all the other pieces in order and all the way up. After the first piece is in place, you can use a nail gun or your own might, and just keep laying tongue and groove all the way up until you reach the peak. Make sure when you get to the peak that you leave an overlap. Once one side is complete, you're going to do the same on the opposite side. And again, start at the bottom, uh, where it overhangs and creates an eave. And then you're going to go all the way up the other side. And then you should see that you can't go up any further because the one side peak is overlapping. Then you're going to take your circular saw and cut a V shape in the peak on the one side, and that'll create the perfect angle of your tongue and groove ceiling. And then as you lay in your last piece, it's also going to be cut to the proper pitch of your roof. You're going to butt the two top pieces together in a V shape, and it should seal. It won't be watertight, but it'll look nice, and it'll be very accurately done. Step 5, eaves and peaks. The next step will straighten out your eaves extending over the roof to the peak. Okay, so you're going to snap a chalk line here, students, and then you're going to start at the bottom and take your circular saw, and you're going to have to run it all the way up to the peak on one side of your roof, on one wing, and then do the same thing, snap a chalk line on the other side and run the saw all the way up to the peak of the other side. Once this is done, you now have a flat surface, straight as an arrow, and you can walk outside and see a nice eave that has been formed by your own craftsmanship. Step 6, weatherproof. So you want to waterproof, pretty much this wings, and you know that you've already done your OSB on your gables and you're also your tar paper on your gables. You're going to do the same thing with tar paper over this wing, and you're going to start at the bottom and unroll the tar paper and staple it in about every square 8 inches. And you're going to use a lot of staples, of course, but you can also put a string through the staples, which strengthens the tar paper against wind. And then once your first course is done at the bottom, you go to the next course all the way up to the peak. The reason why you want to do this is because the water will run from the top to the bottom. So that's why you start at the bottom and then overlap the next piece and then overlap the next piece, because then the water will run down is what you want. Okay, so take a step back and make yourself a nice salad or a hamburger and steak and some bratwursts, and crack open a Pepsi, and have a nice blue cheese dressing on your salad, and we'll see you in the next video. And then, of course, in closing, please click the thumbs up at the bottom here, and please help our ratings by subscribing to the channel, and then check us out at www.university1310.org, where all of our resources are currently free. And you can actually download a lot of these spreadsheets and also project plans that we have to help you in your project. So wishing you all the best for you and your family, and health, and Godspeed.